65 fighters. That's the number that spread through Bangkok in the months after it happened. 65 men, all different sizes, all different disciplines, boxers, wrestlers, Muay Thai champions, street fighters. Not one of them fought twice. The footage doesn't exist. There are no photographs. There's no official record of the date or the exact place. But the witnesses, they never spoke about it the same way again. Something shifted in them, something unspoken. This isn't legend, this is memory, and memory never forgets. Bangkok, 1969, late summer. The air was thick, humid, suffocating. The city smelled like sweat and gasoline and something ancient, something that had always been there, watching from the shadows. Bruce Lee was supposed to be a movie star. That was the narrative. Green Hornet, Hollywood contracts, the soft sell of stardom translated for Western audiences. But in Southeast Asia, something different was happening. The whispers started in Hong Kong first, across the Pearl River, into Macau, down through Canton, spreading like ripples in water. Bruce wasn't just an actor, he was something else, something dangerous. Stories circulated about his martial arts, about the way he moved, about what happened when he trained with the old masters. Most people dismissed it. Hollywood movies make everyone look invincible. But the fighters knew. In Bangkok, the Muay Thai community was a closed circuit. It had been for centuries. Fathers taught sons. Temples housed the fighters. The ring was sacred. These weren't trained athletes in the Western sense. They were warriors whose entire identity was built on combat, on testing themselves against death, on finding truth through violence. When news arrived that Bruce Lee would be visiting Thailand, it traveled fast. He came because he wanted to study, not to prove anything, not to conquer. He came as a student. This was the part that made the fighters nervous, a man so skilled that he came to learn. The gym itself was nameless. It didn't have a sign. You went because you were sent. The wooden structure sat in a warehouse district, blocks away from the glittering hotels and temples. Inside, the walls were stained dark with decades of sweat. The smell was animal, primal. The floor was worn smooth by endless footsteps. This was where the real fighters trained. When Bruce walked in, the room changed. It wasn't loud. No one shouted, no one made a scene, but every eye moved. The training stopped. The sound of heavy bags quieted. Even the rhythmic chanting of the young boxers drifted into silence. He was smaller than anyone expected. That was the shock. Despite the stories, despite the reputation, Bruce Lee was lean, compact. His frame was almost delicate compared to the massive bodies in the gym. Fighters who had spent years cultivating pure, functional muscle. He wore simple clothes. His hair was long, swept back. His eyes were calm. Too calm. The head trainer, a man named Promote, who had trained for 40 years, studied Bruce like a puzzle. Promote had fought everyone. He had taken power shots from men who would crack concrete. He had studied boxing, kickboxing, wrestling, every art. And something in Promote's expression shifted when he saw Bruce. Recognition. Not of fame, recognition of something else. "You come to watch?" Promote asked. His English was precise but accented, shaped by decades of not bothering to perfect it. "I come to learn," Bruce said. No ego, no challenge in the words, just truth. This was the second shock. The fighters expected arrogance. They expected a Western martial artist, full of himself, wanting to prove something. But Bruce seemed genuinely interested in what they were doing. He asked questions about technique, about the philosophy of Muay Thai, about why they fought. For 3 days, nothing happened. Bruce trained. He was courteous. He worked with the younger fighters, never at full intensity, always respectful. He watched the experienced fighters with genuine attention. He asked Promote about the evolution of Thai boxing, about the relationship between speed and power, about how the body could be shaped into something more than just muscle. But something was building. The fighters felt it. On the 4th day, everything changed. It started with a challenge, not formal, not even direct. It came from a fighter named Sakchai, a heavyweight, maybe 210 pounds, all of it trained violence. Sakchai had won his last 7 fights. He was local royalty. "You want to spar?" Bruce asked. In front of the gym. Not a question, a test. Bruce smiled. Sure. They put on gloves. Light sparring, everyone assumed. just a light exchange to feel each other out. The gym gathered around the ring, not the official one, just a cleared space on the floor. No referee, no rules, just two martial artists. Promote watched from the side, his arms crossed, his face still. Sakchai threw first, a jab, measuring distance. Bruce slipped it effortlessly. Another jab, slip. Another, slip. Sakchai was testing, trying to find Bruce's pattern, testing Bruce's speed. Then Sakchai threw a hook. It was calculated to be playful, power held back, but watching the gym, you could see something shift in Bruce's expression. Not anger, engagement. Suddenly, the casual student was gone. Bruce countered with a palm strike so fast that half the gym didn't see it. Sakchai's head snapped back. The sound was like a branch cracking. Everyone froze. It wasn't hard, Bruce had controlled it, but it was fast enough that every fighter in the gym understood this was not a movie star. This was something else. The next 15 seconds were a blur of movement. Sakchai threw combinations, good combinations, studied sequences that had worked on every opponent he'd faced. Bruce moved like water, not running, not obviously dodging, but simply not being where the strikes were aimed. Then Bruce countered again, a palm strike, controlled, not a full power shot, but a demonstration, and Sakchai stumbled backward. The sparring ended. No one called it, it just stopped. They took off the gloves. Sakchai's chest was heaving, his face was shocked. Bruce extended his hand. "Thank you," he said. "Very good." Sakchai shook it, but his hand was trembling slightly. That night, the conversation started. "Who is this man?" voices whispered in the gym. "Where did he train? Have you ever seen someone move like that?" "No, never." And then, "We need to know what he really is." By the 5th day, word had spread. More fighters arrived at the gym. Curious fighters, confident fighters, fighters who believed they had beaten everyone worth beating. The Muay Thai community in Bangkok was proud of their lineage, proud of their tradition, proud of their dominance in their own region. A Western martial artist, even one with Bruce's reputation, was seen as an outsider, an interesting outsider, but still someone who needed to be tested. By the 7th day, there were requests. Fighters asking for sparring sessions, young champions who wanted to test themselves, men with something to prove. And Bruce agreed to every one. This was the critical choice. He could have refused. He could have said he was here to learn, not to fight. But Bruce understood something fundamental about martial artists. Respect only came through action, through demonstration, through proving yourself under pressure.
So he decided he would face them. Not all of them, but as many as he could. What happened next would never appear in any official history. There would be no documentary footage, no photographs, no official record. But the fighters who were there, and who would eventually count to 65, would carry the memory for the rest of their lives. Promote made a decision. He would coordinate it. Not as a competition, but as a series of exchanges. Different fighters, different styles. Some would push hard. Some would test specific techniques. All of them would find out something they didn't know before. Rumors began to spread through the Bangkok underground. "Come to the gym tomorrow. Bruce Lee is sparring. Bring the young guys. Let them see something. Bring whoever can fight. Something is happening here." The thing about martial arts culture is that it runs on myth. These stories don't need photographs or witnesses in the modern sense. They survive because of something deeper, because they're told and retold in gyms, in training sessions, in the quiet moments when fighters are alone with their doubt and their ambition. By day 9, the gym had become something different. It was no longer just a training space. It was a gathering place. Fighters came early and stayed late. The usual schedule of classes disappeared. Everyone was waiting for something, waiting to see. By day 12, Bruce had already faced 7 fighters, 7 different approaches, 7 different challenges, and the word was starting to settle into the collective consciousness. He wasn't losing. Not one. Not even close. He wasn't winning in the sense of knockouts or submissions, but in the context of these exchanges, where speed and precision and understanding mattered more than raw power. He was demonstrating something that challenged everything these fighters believed about combat. Size wasn't destiny. Strength wasn't destiny. There was something else, something that existed in the gap between intention and action, in the space where the brain and the body intersected at impossible speeds. By day 15, there were more than 20 fighters who had asked to spar. By day 20, it was closer to 40. By day 25, that's when the real moment would come. The gym was packed now, not packed in the way of a public event, but saturated with presence. There were fighters in corners, observers sitting on benches, trainers standing by the walls. The energy was electric. No one was talking much. They were all waiting for the test. Because someone had put out the challenge differently this time. Not an individual fighter, not promote, but the collective understanding of the gym. If you want to test yourself against him, come tomorrow. Word spread through Bangkok's fighting community like a fever. The young champions heard it, the confident ones, the ones who had never been truly tested, the ones who believed that skill could only be measured through actual combat, through power, through the ancient art of warfare. By morning, they were arriving. Bruce didn't know the exact number, maybe 40, maybe 50, maybe more than that. Fighters of different ages, different weights, different specialties. All of them had something to prove. All of them had heard the stories, and all of them wanted to be the one who would finally break through, finally show that Bruce Lee was human, finally claim the crown. What they didn't understand was that Bruce wasn't thinking about crowns anymore. He had evolved past that. He was thinking about something deeper, about understanding, about pushing the boundaries of what the human body and mind could achieve together, about finding truth through honest exchange. This was the moment that would be remembered. This was the day that changed everything.
They came all morning, one by one, in pairs, in small groups. The word had spread through the underground circuit. Bruce Lee is at the gym. Anyone can come. Anyone can spar. No tickets, no rules, no referees, just honest exchange. By noon, there were more than 50 fighters waiting. The gym was beyond capacity. Men spilled into the hallway. They stood 3 deep around the sparring area. The air was thick with anticipation and something else, something ancient and primal. This was the oldest test, the way warriors had always measured themselves, not through words or records or bragging, but through the body, through movement, through truth. Bruce stood in the center, unchanged. His expression was calm, almost meditative. He wore simple shorts and no shirt. His body was lean, defined, every muscle visible and purposeful, with nothing wasted. He looked almost fragile next to these men. Promote stood nearby, arms crossed. He had made one decision: no time limits, no rounds. Sparring would continue until someone needed to stop, not because they were knocked down, but because they understood. The first fighter stepped forward, a heavyweight named Somchai, maybe 220 pounds, a 3-time regional champion. He had trained his entire life in Muay Thai. His kicks could break bones. His clinches were legendary. Light sparring? Bruce asked. Light, Somchai agreed. They touched gloves. What happened next was impossible to fully process in real time. Somchai threw a jab. Bruce wasn't there. Somchai threw another. Bruce slipped it by moving his head a fraction of an inch. The precision was inhuman. It was like watching someone predict the future. Then Bruce countered with a straight punch, controlled, crisp. The sound it made was clear and distinct. Somchai's head snapped back. "Okay," Somchai said, breathing hard. "Okay, I see." He bowed to Bruce. Respectfully, the sparring ended. The next fighter was different, younger, faster, a boxer who had studied under a former Olympic trainer.
He came in aggressive, throwing combinations, beautiful sequences, left, right. Bruce absorbed the distance with footwork so subtle it barely seemed like movement. Then he threw a palm strike that stopped just before contact, a demonstration, not a full hit. The fighter staggered back anyway, the shockwave alone enough to disrupt his breathing. "Thank you," Bruce said. "You're very quick." The fighter bowed. The respect was immediate and absolute. One after another. A wrestler. Bruce used his speed to create angles the wrestler couldn't follow. A street fighter. Bruce's precision made raw power obsolete. A kickboxer. Bruce's footwork neutralized the range advantage. By mid-afternoon, it was clear that something unprecedented was happening. The fighters kept coming, but the encounters were no longer about proving something to Bruce. They were about witnessing, about being part of something that shouldn't be possible, about understanding that the boundaries of human capability were different than they thought. Some fighters lasted 30 seconds, some lasted 3 minutes. None of them looked defeated. They looked transformed. This was the difference. Bruce wasn't crushing egos. He was expanding consciousness. He was showing them something about themselves they didn't know existed. By late afternoon, something shifted. A different kind of fighter arrived. His name was Niran, and he was different from the others. Not bigger, not necessarily stronger, but he was a fighter, the kind of man who lived for combat, who had been tested in actual wars, who had developed instincts beyond technique. He was older, 45 maybe, 50. His body was scarred, his face had absorbed decades of punishment, but his eyes were intelligent and dangerous. Niran looked at Bruce for a long moment. "Real fight?" he asked. The gym went silent. Even Promote tensed. "I don't know, honestly," Bruce said. "What does that mean to you?" "No control, real power, real speed. We see who is really better." This was the crossroads. Bruce could say no, could maintain the spirit of learning, of exchange, of respect. But something in his expression changed. Not arrogance, not pride, understanding. "Okay," Bruce said. "Real fight." They didn't use gloves. Hand wraps only. This was different now. More intimate, more dangerous. This was the moment where philosophy became flesh. Niran moved first. A roundhouse kick, full power, aimed at Bruce's body. It was a testing kick, powerful enough to confirm whether Bruce had the toughness to absorb impact. Bruce spun sideways. The kick passed a fraction of an inch from his ribs. He countered immediately with a reverse punch aimed at Niran's face. Niran slipped it. They exchanged for 7 seconds. 7 seconds of genuine combat. Not hard, not soft, but real. Every movement had intention. Every counter had consequences. The fighters watching could feel it. Then Bruce did something unexpected. He stopped. "Stop," he said. Niran stopped immediately. Bruce was breathing hard, truly engaged now. "You're too good for this. Too real. Too honest. If we keep going, one of us will hurt each other seriously. That's not why I came here." Niran stood there for a moment. Then he nodded, a nod of recognition, of respect so deep it transcended normal martial arts courtesy. "You're not human," Niran said. "You move like something else." He bowed, a deep bow, the kind reserved for masters.
The gym erupted in chaos. Not loud chaos, shocked chaos, whispers, exclamations, the realization of what they had witnessed. The gym transformed. The energy that had been building toward confrontation suddenly inverted into something else, into reverence, into understanding. Fighter after fighter approached Bruce differently now. They didn't come to test, they came to learn. They came to be near something that shouldn't exist. The encounters changed. They became demonstrations. Bruce showed them principles instead of just speed. He showed them how small adjustments in structure created impossible power, how efficiency meant more than size, how understanding the opponent's movement before they made it was the highest skill.
By sunset, no one else wanted to fight. They wanted to understand. But the number kept growing. More fighters arrived. Word had spread through Bangkok now. Not just the gym, through the whole city, through every underground circuit, through the whisper network that connected all the fighters who had ever trained seriously. Bruce Lee changed something today. Everything is different now. Later, when people tried to remember, they would argue about the exact number. Was it 65? 70? 100? No one kept track. There were no scorecards, no judges, no official record. But Promote counted. He stood by the wall, ticking off on his fingers. By the end of the day, the number was 73. 73 different fighters, across different styles, different weights, different levels of experience. Not one of them felt defeated. Not one of them felt broken. Instead, something else had happened. A collective understanding, a shared recognition that the categories they had used to understand combat, size, strength, power, conditioning, were not the complete picture. There was something else, something that existed in the intersection of precision and speed and perfect understanding, something that transcended physical categories. In other words, skill, pure skill. The next morning, the gym was quiet. Bruce came to train and the entire space shifted. Fighters gave him space. Trainers watched silently. The young boxers stopped their drills just to watch him move. By the end of the week, Bruce left Bangkok. He didn't give speeches, he didn't talk about his victories or his philosophy or what he had proven. He simply left, carrying with him the memory of what had happened. But the ripples spread. Trainers began teaching differently. The emphasis on pure power began to diminish. Questions about efficiency and precision started to dominate the conversation. Fighters who had trained for decades began to wonder if they had missed something fundamental. The story spread, not as legend, as testimony, as personal experience retold in gyms across Asia. I was there, I saw it. Or, my brother was there, he said it was impossible. Or, they say he faced 70 fighters in one day, 70, and every single one learned something. The numbers changed with each telling, but the essential truth remained. Size doesn't determine outcome. Strength isn't destiny. Speed and precision and perfect understanding exist in a hierarchy above raw power. Years later, when Bruce would speak about martial arts, he would often reference this principle. Do not pray for an easy life. Pray for the strength to endure a difficult one. But what he meant, what he had demonstrated in that Bangkok gym, was something deeper. The warrior's path is not about winning, it's about evolving. Every fighter he faced that day evolved, not because they were defeated, but because they were shown something true about themselves and about the boundaries of human capabilities. This is what made the moment legendary. Not that Bruce Lee beat 65 fighters, but that 65 fighters were transformed by meeting someone who had evolved beyond the conventional categories of combat. Speed over power, precision over size, understanding over strength, efficiency over effort. These weren't tricks or techniques, they were principles, and principles could be taught, could be learned, could become part of the collective consciousness of martial arts itself. The footage was never released because no one was filming it. The photographs don't exist because no one was thinking about photographs. The official record is blank because no authority was watching. But in the minds of 73 fighters, or 65 depending on who's counting, something shifted that day, something fundamental about what was possible. Bruce Lee didn't prove he was the best fighter in Bangkok. He proved something larger. He proved that human potential exists beyond the categories we use to limit it, that the body can be trained to move in ways that seem to violate physics, that the mind and body, when perfectly synchronized, can achieve things that individual power alone can never accomplish. This wasn't a victory. This was a revelation. And in a city known for fighters, in a gym dedicated to the oldest fighting tradition in Southeast Asia, a small, lean man from Hong Kong showed that tradition a mirror, and the tradition looked at itself differently forever after. This story was almost lost to history. No championship belt, no trophy, no official recognition, just a day in Bangkok gym that changed how an entire culture understood combat. The fighters who were there never forgot. They carried it with them. They taught it to their students. They told it to anyone who would listen. And slowly, subtly, Over decades, the principles Bruce Lee demonstrated that day became woven into the fabric of martial arts worldwide. Size stopped mattering as much. Power stopped being the primary metric. Efficiency and precision and speed became the new measures of mastery. This is how true transformation happens, not through conquest, but through revelation. Not through breaking people, but through showing them what they could become. This is the story that was never told, but it was always remembered.